This is Y376 International Political Economy. This lecture was given over 2 dates, November 13th and November 18th, 2008. National governments have to cope with globalization, and there are a number of strategies that are possible. Downsizing of the state is not always a good policy. In the case of the formerly centrally planned economies, that really wasn't possible, since in order to make the transition from communism, they had to figure out a way to privatize state enterprises, and of course the state was responsible for doing that. But also they had to figure out ways to tax the new private enterprises and how to deal with things like unemployment insurance and so forth. National governments are likely to play a role in reducing inequalities accentuated by globalization in all parts of the world. Here are some examples of coping strategies. One thing that all countries in the more globalized system have to do is to try to promote foreign investors to see their country or their region as an attractive place to invest. So one of the ways to do that is to raise the skills of the workers through education and training programs. Also, there has to be more support for higher education in the form of scholarships and fellowships, for example, so that people who are talented but can't afford to go to college can do so. There needs to be increased spending on research and development so that any company looking to invest can be sure that the kind of technical infrastructure that's necessary for more advanced operations is present. Also, there has to be a fair amount of focus on developing particularly backward regions, regions that are not otherwise attractive to investment. So, and that could be domestic investment as well as international. One of the criticisms of globalization is that it creates incentives for what are called races to the bottom. This is the tendency of political units to reduce regulations, taxes, or standards in order to match the reductions of others as part of a competition for the location of value-added activities in their territory. So that could be either foreign investment or domestic investment. And it's seen as a negative consequence of globalization. Here are some examples of possible races to the bottom in the form of corporate taxation, environmental regulations, wages and other labor practices, and also sort of cultural, internet-related things like pornography, gambling, and the spread of hate groups. Here's an example of tax havens in the area of taxation. These are countries that basically reduce their tax rates on all kinds of corporations in order to attract facilities, and generally speaking, all that's set up in these countries are offices to which revenue is shifted in order to reduce the overall tax rate. But examples would be the Netherlands Antilles, Luxembourg, Bermuda, Panama, Belize, and Monaco. This slide talks about the issue of global pollution and races to the bottom in the environmental area, and here the example deals with the disposal of hazardous electronic waste. You can click the link to see a long and interesting 60-minute story on this issue about the dumping of electronic waste in China, burning of it. And it also talks about two organizations, one treaty and one organization, that deal with this issue. The Basel Convention on hazardous waste trade is an important area, and one of the non-governmental organizations that monitors the enforcement of this treaty is the Basel Action Network. The example of pornography is particularly important to certain countries which feel that pornography is spreading from advanced industrial countries like the United States to the rest of the world, and thereby degrading their culture. But in fact, it's a very big industry worldwide, and it turns out that a lot of the customers are outside the U.S. It's a $97 billion industry worldwide, 13 billion of which is revenues in the United States. Of the 13 billion in the United States, almost 3 billion come from internet pornography. The United States is #1 in generating pornographic web pages and in using them. You can see what are the main channels for delivering pornography, primarily video, mainly DVDs. Internet comes #2, then you've got exotic dancers, cable TV, and magazines at the end. The biggest customers are actually in China, Korea, and Japan. The U.S. comes #4. So in fact, there's plenty of demand for pornography out there. This shows the increase in the number of visits to adult websites, which is, I guess, accelerated in the last few years. Many countries have tried to control this particular cultural aspect of globalization, and particularly via the internet, with regulations and with police. That picture is the picture of the female internet policeman in China. The symbol of police, they have a male and female figure, and that one's Cha-Cha, I believe, who is the female. In China, the internet cafes are required to monitor the way the users are using the internet. So they have these big monitors called Big Mama monitors, where the owner of the cafe can see what's on the screens of all the other users, and if there's any pornography, they're required to shut them down. They're not allowed to use anonymous websites or anonymous email addresses in China, and obviously public expressions of dissent are strictly controlled. People can be arrested and imprisoned for expressing dissent via the internet. You can see a Wikipedia entry on this if you click on that last line. A lot of U.S. firms have been criticized for complying with Chinese regulations, Microsoft, Yahoo, and Google, for example. And it's basically, they claim that it's necessary in order to maintain their business in China, but obviously it makes them vulnerable to criticisms from people who oppose limitations on human rights in China. In the area of gaming, gaming revenues it's a major industry. It's almost as big as the pornography industry. The casino part of it is also growing, but that's only about $35 billion per year. And the casinos are a very powerful player in American politics. So the casinos and the gaming industry more generally has lobbied for restrictions on gambling on the internet. So this slide deals with the restrictions on internet poker, and has some links to some videos that explain this issue, so I'll leave you to that. Also, hate speech and hate groups have used the internet to spread their word. Examples would be the World Church of the Creator, the Ku Klux Klan, the Stormfront, and the Volksfront. All of those are neo-Nazi or racist groups. There have been controversies over the sale of Nazi paraphernalia on eBay and on Yahoo, and certain countries' laws actually have been violated, so that Yahoo basically has to take off any Nazi paraphernalia that's made available to French citizens on the French version of Yahoo, and eBay has to be careful about that too. There's a link to a website that lists a number of hate sites and hate groups that was put up by the Southern Poverty Law Center in Mobile, Alabama. What the flat world means for America. Well, here are two quotes. America as a whole, this is from the Friedman book, America as a whole will do fine in a flat world with free trade, provided it continues to churn out knowledge workers who are able to produce idea-based goods that can be sold globally. The Indians and Chinese are not racing us to the bottom, they are racing us to the top, and that is a good thing. Friedman is very concerned about the fact that the United States is falling behind in the training of scientists and engineers. He also says, in China today, Bill Gates is Britney Spears. In America today, Britney Spears is Britney Spears, and that is our problem. What he means there is that American students aspire to be pop stars or athletes rather than engineers as they do in East Asia. It turns out that some of this fear about the lack of training of scientists and engineers, it may not be based on hard facts. Even though China and India are graduating more students in science and engineering than the United States, basically because they're larger countries, nevertheless, there does seem to be one of the contentions is that U.S. high school students are not getting the right training, that they score lower on various kinds of tests, that there will be an increasing decline in science and engineering as fewer immigrants come to the United States, that R&D investment in the U.S. is declining, and that innovative activity is declining. Well, it turns out that the test scores are getting better, maybe for other reasons, but nevertheless, the test scores in math are doing okay. People are taking the right kinds of science classes in high school, and in fact, it turns out that we're training quite a number of scientists and engineers, but they choose not to go into science and engineering jobs. And so the question is, why is that the case? What is it about those jobs that don't make them as attractive as non-science and engineering jobs to people who are qualified for them? And what's the deal here? It turns out that there are a lot of jobs in technical high-tech industries, and the biggest area of growth has been in software and computer services, as you can see in this map. We've sort of held the line on aerospace jobs. There's been an increase in communications jobs, which would include cell phones and cable and that kind of stuff. Computer jobs have been declining partly because of the migration of that industry to East Asia, mainly to Taiwan and Korea, but now increasingly to China. And consumer electronics has been going down for a long time, but it's not a big employer. Another area that's growing fairly rapidly but still fairly small is biotechnology.